Our next guest has really good insight into the mentality that perpetuates sanctuary policies, sanctuary city, county, state policies like Chicago, Cook County, Illinois have. And frankly, I think it has wider application. It also helps to explain the mentality that supports no cash bail, supports non-prosecution, decarceration, and defunding of police. Because, I mean, the Venn diagram of those two groups is, I would argue, probably very close to, if not a perfect circle. I'll let him make his argument, but let me give you an example of the mentality. This was a man on the street interview by some independent journalist, doing a bit of a Penn and Teller routine with a fake petition. Please sign this petition to make sure Abigail Spanberger, the moderate, scare quotes, governor of Virginia, make her accountable for the promise she made, which is to be a sanctuary for people in this country illegally. So there's an individual who has been taken into custody and could be deported if we don't intervene and make sure Abigail Spanberger lives down to her word. And this is how that proceeded with some senior awful.
This is Angel David Rubio Marine. So they're trying to send him back to Mexico, but we want to keep him here in Virginia and hold Abigail Spanberger accountable to what she promised, not to cooperate with ICE. We have to disclose, though, that he was charged of soliciting child pornography and of public masturbation. So he's being held right now, but we think he deserves a second chance. We don't want him to get deported. What do you think? We don't want ICE to take him and send him back to Mexico. Is there an issue?
Did he do it?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he was charged with it.
Jail?
Yep, he's in jail right now with an ICE detainer.
You couldn't just throw me an easy one.
Well, what's the issue there? What are you having a difficult time with?
I have a difficult time with men like that. And I'm not in the habit of going out of my way to do anything to support them. But on the other hand, I mean, Spanberg, she talks a good story. I voted for her. I agree we need to hold her accountable.
Well, do you think that ICE should deport someone like this?
I don't think ICE should exist.
Oh, no.
Hilarious.
I mean, is it better to keep him here in Virginia? He came into this country illegally, and now he's committing crimes and preying on children.
Right.
Should we send him back?
God, I don't know.
Or, I mean, should we keep him here and have the Virginia taxpayer pay for his rehabilitation and his imprisonment?
No.
No?
I don't want to pay for his imprisonment.
Send him back then?
Yeah. Send him back.
Such a tough call to argue for or against deporting a child porn monger and pervert. Such a tough call. Painstaking, the process to get her to agree that he should be sent back. And the result of that interaction will be she sees the light now and she'll not be a Spanberger supporter and not be a sanctuary state supporter anymore? No, of course not. She thinks that ICE should be abolished. And that incongruence will persist after this interview. You can bank on it. And so the sanctuary policies in Virginia will. And the lack of cooperation with ICE. And the number of victims will increase. Just like we've seen in Chicago. Punctuated, of course, by last week's murder of Sheridan Gorman, who still, the Chicago press corps, such as it is not reporting or minimizing Rogers Parkman, Venezuelan migrant, the fact that he was yet another person in this country illegally, residing in Chicago, who had a previous interaction with law enforcement and was turned out to be in a position where he could murder an 18-year-old freshman from Loyola who was enjoying the beach with her friends. More on this. Pleased to be joined by Andrew Arthur, resident fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan.
I appreciate the piece that you wrote, particularly the, to the insight into the mentality that I think commonsensical people struggle with by a bit of a historical comparison to the Spanish Civil War of the 1930s. Please elucidate for us.
Sure. During the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s, there were nationalist forces and Republican forces. The Republicans were socialists. The nationalists were aligned with the fascists, and the nationalists ended up winning, or the nationalists ended up winning that war. But the socialist side had a champion named Dolores Iturbe, and she came up with a slogan for the revolution, for her movement, called "No pasarán," they shall not pass. Giving up one single inch of land to the other side would be a disaster for the Republican cause, and it would spell the end. And if you look at these sanctuary cities, they have adopted that "No pasarán" instinct, that slogan, that if we allow even the worst criminal alien to be taken into custody by ICE, to be removed from the United States, that it's going to be a defeat for their vision of open borders, free immigration, everybody is human, no human is illegal.
Right, and you see this playing out in real time. If you think there's some compromised position or the Trump administration isn't doing enough to engage to try to end the DHS funding impasse. And then last week, we find that letter had been sent saying the administration is willing to make some concessions on certain things with respect to ICE, with respect to name badges and masking and so forth, and also just restated things that are current policy now that the Abolish ICE crowd was arguing was not current policy. But that was a dead letter. I mean, that generated zero response from the other side because because there is no common ground or middle ground to be forged with people who are campaigning on Abolish ICE.
Yeah, and, press reports came out today that 1,768 detainers by ICE in Illinois have been rejected in the last year. Those are requests by ICE to take into custody some of the worst criminal aliens. And yet Illinois, Chicago, they won't hand those people over because they don't want to see anybody deported from the United States. Now, there is a compromise, Dan. The compromise is actually already the law, the Immigration and Nationality Act. If you are a rapist, you have to go. If you're a murderer, you have to leave, and we will deport you. And if you come illegally, you have to leave too. And Tom Homan, who authored the letter in question, of course, the president's border czar, he showed up in Minneapolis in late January, and law enforcement changed. A lot of the things that the Democrats complained about when they shut down DHS were already over by the time that Homan showed up. Homan wants to get the criminals off the street. He wants to make Chicago and Minneapolis and New York and Los Angeles safe places to live. And yet, they're holding on to their criminals like a baby being held to the chest. So none of it makes sense. None of it is good for public safety. And unfortunately, people like Sheridan Gorman, the young Loyola student, have paid the price.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, our governor, JB, famously said that, you come for my people, you come through me. And my people, he's talking about people in this country illegally residing in Illinois. And he didn't make distinctions. He didn't draw lines. When Brandon Johnson demonizes ICE as, modern day slave patrols, like so many other neo-Marxist politicians, I mean, he doesn't distinguish. He doesn't say, there's some instances. There's no layering here. There's no line drawing. Yes, there are instances where they cross the line. In other cases, when they remove people who are clearly repeat predators and present a public safety threat. We're pleased with that, so we have to figure out how to do things sensibly with a little bit more consideration from my position. There's none of that sort of nuanced discussion. It's all they're jackbooted thugs. They are, as I said, slave patrol. They're a death squad disappearing people. And in some states, they're even doubling down, like in Maryland. And I know you wrote about this as well. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago when the sheriffs protested that the state moved to eliminate local sheriff's departments from entering 287G agreements with ICE, even for the purpose of that limited constructive engagement with those people that no one disagrees are public safety threats. And it goes back to, I think, what you were saying before, which is, and you give an inch, you cannot give an inch. We are dogmatically dug in on this, and all we'll let them do is come to our way of thinking and celebrate their concessions as proof that our dogmatism is warranted.
Yeah, no, and, I was a resident of Baltimore City, and I can assure you, Dan, the one thing that Maryland doesn't lack is criminals. We got plenty of homegrown ones,
Yeah.
and if we could take the alien criminals off the street, it's going to ameliorate a lot of harm, danger, sadness for the residents of the state of Maryland. Let me give you an example. In 2018, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the DOJ, did a examination of 400,000 people who had been released from criminal incarceration and tracked them for 9 years. 44% of them were rearrested in the first year, 68% were rearrested by the third year, and 5 out of 6 were rearrested within 9 years. Collectively, those 400,000 people who had been released from criminal custody had 2 million more arrests after they were released. And I think the point is, Dan, that, most people aren't criminals. Even most illegal aliens aren't criminals.
Right.
But alien criminals are criminals, and it's better for public safety to release them or to remove them from the United States. But let me just go back to something that the Biden administration said when they explained why they didn't want to take criminal aliens into custody. And they said advancing equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity is the responsibility of the whole of government. So in their minds, deporting any criminal alien was taking us back to the 1950s, to Alabama and George Wallace. And, unfortunately, that's the attitude that is proliferating with Brandon Johnson, J.B. Pritzker, Jacob Fry in Minneapolis, Tim Waltz in Minnesota. And it's completely backward.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, no, you think the federal government, the Trump administration, is doing enough with what they can do, like, for example, the purse strings, to try to hamstring sanctuary jurisdictions from being sanctuary jurisdictions, to try and realign their incentives, at least mete out some punishment that we're not going to help underwrite lawlessness?
No, absolutely not. In fact, Congress needs to do more. They need to put restrictions on the billions, tens of billions of dollars that they give to states and localities every year to support local policing. And they need to, make it clear that if you won't cooperate with ICE, you don't get government money. When I was a kid, they raised the drinking age at the federal level to 21 by denying federal road funds. Congress can do the same thing today. They can force compliance by states and localities like Chicago and Illinois by limiting the federal funds that they get. And if they won't play ball with ICE, they don't get the money. Because really, at the end of the day, Dan, all that ICE wants to do is make the streets safer, not make aliens live in fear.
Hey, the other dynamic, too, people are always asking about, as I'm sure you get this question, about these sanctuary PALs and whether or not they have, complete immunity. And, the argument is that there needs to be an overt act where they break federal law, like that judge in Milwaukee who helped the illegal immigrant escape from ICE and, escape the courthouse from ICE. She got successfully prosecuted. But just not cooperating isn't enough. And I wonder if you've seen instances where you think actually some of these politicians are either very close to the line or crossing the line, and federal prosecutors, because we know the locals won't do it, federal prosecutors should be paying more attention.
Yeah, just to be clear for your listeners, smuggling an alien into the United States is plainly a crime. But so is sheltering an alien in the United States, and an argument could be made that many of these policies do nothing more than shelter criminal aliens from ICE enforcement. That should be a crime. whether any, federal judge in Illinois is going to find that any local politician has done that. I doubt it. In fact, I don't even think you're going to be able to find a grand jury that's going to hand down an indictment like that. But it's a legitimate argument. It's time that Americans take back their own safety. Look, we have the right to live safe lives. We have the right not to, send our kids off to school and worry about whether they're going to be murdered by some random individual who shouldn't even be in the country. And it's time that Americans take back that right. This isn't anti-immigrant. This is pro-safety, and this is something that every civilized society does or should do.
Andrew Arthur is a resident fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan.
And he joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Safety. It's so important at your industrial facility. You need to keep your personnel safe and meet OSHA requirements. One problem with your ladders, platforms, or safety guards, and you could be facing costly fines. Van's Industrial